Alright, people, the boys are back. B&B Podcast, me, Rory Spooner, James Veck, and Reese Hentley. We got all the latest news and views. In terms of subscribers, we've had a massive increase over the past sort of 28 days on YouTube. So just a big shout out to everybody who's subscribed and watching. We truly appreciate it. We really do. And all our new IG followers as well. Shout out to you too. You always interact with us in the DMs, and we appreciate it as well. Okay, so let's get straight into it, gents, because we have a lot to get through, because it's been a busy, busy week since we've done the last podcast. The breaking news last night was Donny van Der Beek to Manchester United. Now, just to give some people some sort of context behind that move, because we were just discussing it a little bit before we came on. Van Der Beek apparently has been a Manchester United target since January, but didn't want to leave in January because of his Ajax commitments. The news broke last night because Van Der Beek was left out of Ajax's friendly against Frankfurt, I think it was, at which point afterwards the Ajax manager came out and said there's imminent transfer news regarding him. We decided on both sides, from Ajax and himself, for him to sit this one out. So the journalists obviously went wild with that. Big news, especially in Spain, because initially they thought Van Der Beek was going to Real Madrid back in 2019. That move never materialised. I don't think Zidane really wanted him that much. I think Zidane is more interested in, from what I gather, Camavinga of Rennes. So the journalists then kind of put two and two together and got four, because they've already established that Barcelona want Wijnaldum. So by the power of deduction, that only leaves Manchester United. So it looks like that deal is on. It's going to be potentially around 35 to 40 million. Becky, I'll start with you, bro, being that you're United fan. What's your take on Van Der Beek? Are you happy with that?
I would be very happy, yes. It seems like a more realistic signing. Do you know what I mean? We've been hearing a lot of Jadon Sancho and all these massive numbers they usually attribute to a Manchester United transfer. And you mentioned about 35, 40 million would be the going rate. It just seems like a sensible kind of transfer for a player that is quite highly rated.
Correct.
And yes, you'll have the people who say, but he's only doing it in the Dutch league, and can he do it in the Premier League? But that's the same with anybody that comes from abroad, right? So if you compare him to the options that United currently have in the holding midfield, you're looking at Matic, probably past it. Fred, McTominay, are they really good enough to be challenging for trophies? I'm sure we do all agree, probably not. So we talk about sort of the going rate for good top-level midfielders in the transfer market these days. I don't think that's a particularly huge risk of money as well. So obviously it's in that speculation stage at the moment, but normally when people that we listen to Spoon tend to go a bit wild over things like this, there's usually something in the water. And it does seem like United do tend to be the only sort of club that are being linked to him now. You cleared up about the Madrid-Barca situation. So I like Van Der Beek. We spoke about him many times in the past. I think he would be a strong addition to our midfield, a necessary addition should that transfer come off.
True that. Reese, what are you saying about it?
Well, I think if we cast our minds back to the period of this summer where Sancho was, not even heavily linked to Manchester United, it was pretty much, at least you guys thought it was a done deal. I think you can sort of add this one to the list of transfers I don't think is going to happen. I think that if we look at Van Der Beek's play style, he is not what you would call a traditional holding midfielder, which is
more of a box-to-box midfielder.
Exactly, yeah. And when he was still is at Ajax, he had Schöne playing behind him, which gave him that freedom to be able to play his game. Now, is he going to come in and displace Paul Pogba? No. Is he going to come in and displace Bruno Fernandes? No. So for that reason, Man United are not going to sign him to play him, in a defensive midfield position where he doesn't have that freedom to actually play his game. More on that point, he's not big enough and strong enough to play in that position where Matic is currently playing and doing a good job, may I add. So it's not going to happen for me. At least if it does happen, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And there's other areas that Man United do need to strengthen first. But on that point, if they do want to get rid of Pogba in the long term, then he's a good option to have instead of Pogba. And of course, like you're saying, 35 million is a good price tag. But
Yeah.
it's Man United, you'd end up getting wrestled up to £60 million. And you'll back out of the deal and end up signing Will Hughes on deadline day.
You reckon, yeah? Do you know what? I'm going to go against the grain there, Reece, with your opinion. With Van Der Beek, you could play him as a defensive midfielder because I think he's got the technical ability, but I don't know if he's necessarily got the tackling ability. What he does best is he plays essentially in the exact same position as someone like Fred. But what he does is he offers more going forward. Now, for me, that's a smart signing because, one, he's a very good player. And two, people have to realise Bayern Munich showed this right in the Champions League final. Strength and depth is so important. You cannot play a full season with just Paul Pogba and Bruno Fernandes. And what's behind them, Lingard, Mata, even McTominay is very limited in terms of what he does. You need someone else that can come in and replace one of those two. So for 35 million, I'm perfectly comfortable with that.
You're right. You are right in what you're saying. However, would you not agree that it's important to have your strength in your 11 first and then build on the depth? Because you haven't got strength in the 11.
I don't know. The United first 11 is not too bad. I mean, what they were really lacking at the end of last season is people to come in. That they rinsed that first 11, though, Reece. Like, they played constantly for the best part of, was it 10 weeks maybe? They played 2-3 games constantly all the time. And it was you could literally, for the first time in years, predict the United 11 every single week without fail. I think that lack of depth really almost hindered them.
They finished third in the Premier League. They need to go up the league, so they need to be challenging. Yeah. And in order to do that, they, in my opinion, need 2 centre-halves and a left-back first. We can talk about a defensive midfielder, which is something that they do need. But realistically, cover from the bench for someone like Paul Pogba is not an urgent priority.
I'm kind of more leaning with Spooner. You're describing Van Der Beek in the way that we're signing him and he'll only go into Pogba's position and that's it, right? I don't quite see it like that. I think Donny van Der Beek improves the United midfield in general from that starting 11. Whether you sort of play him, you compared him to like the Fred position, Spooner, which I think he can do. I don't think he comes in and he's that enforcer, like a Matt Doherty. He's just going to sit and be like the grunt man in the middle of the park. Obviously, that also depends on who you're playing as well, right? Whether you need that role as much. But I think that he can come in, and I go to Spooner's point about the strength and depth also. I think he can come into that starting 11 and they can find a place for him in that midfield where he works. To address the point where you say about Reece, you think it's going to be kind of like a Sancho situation where it just doesn't come off. I do also kind of think that the deals that sort of come out of Holland and from the Dutch league, they're just a little bit more. They're just not as fantasy as like someone like the Sancho.
Yeah. Sancho was huge,
like 100-odd million for Sancho and for these big, huge, high-profile signing. Van Der Beek's a very good player, but I don't think he's that really high-profile name, that gets the fantasy going. So I think there could generally be something in this. Quite kind of similar to when Chelsea signed Ziyech, United signed Daley Blind, Depay. Normally when these tend to get reported, they're not often wrong.
Yeah, very true. Interesting we talk about Sancho, lads, because we'll touch upon him very quickly. That deal, it seems, we said this before we came on, United usually focus on one transfer target at a time, which would mean that they are either very confident that the Sancho deal is done or the Sancho deal is completely dead in the water and they've just decided to move on. So that's very interesting because there was a debate on Twitter a while back about who should United sign instead of Sancho. Now, the overwhelming favourite for that was Memphis Depay. So he has, I think I'm just reading it now, there's a clause in his Lyon contract that means United don't necessarily have a definitive right over him should he decide to leave Lyon. But Lyon are contractually obliged to make Manchester United aware first. So if he is going to leave Lyon, basically they put United at the front of the queue and say, okay, do you want him? If you do, you need to match this. There was big talk from a lot of United fans about maybe signing Depay back, given how he's matured at Lyon. Becky, again, I'll start with you. Do you think he'd be a good signing for Manchester United again, Depay, or would you kind of swerve that one?
Big swerve. Hard pass.
Hard pass, yeah.
Couple of reasons. You never go back. Really, is one of the things you say. I know. Pogba
Never go back to an ex, bro. You know how I feel about that.
I just, my thoughts, right, lads, on the French league first and foremost. And it's not even like he's in a team that's winning the French league. He's in a team that finished 7th in the French league. So, against teams that would struggle to beat Gosain and Trostra, he's in a team that finishes 7th. So it's not like he's ripped the league up, and he's been hugely influential. Yes, he's been very good by French league standards, and I know he did have an injury as well, I believe, which
he did have bad injury.
His numbers. But I just don't see it. We tried it once, it didn't work out, and I can't see it going too differently if he was to come back. And how much would he cost would be for that price as well. Come back, and do you? Anyway, I'll open that question up to Reece when I pass it over now. Do I really think that Memphis Depay is going to come back and tear it up, or do I think he's going to come back and just have a similar impact to what he had the first time over? And I think it's the latter.
Yeah, what do you think, Reece?
Look, I'm with James on this. This is an absolute. First of all, we've got to say it's not going to happen.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think United would go back for a player like Depay, especially somebody who's openly criticised Manchester United since leaving. I don't think that would help their brand as such. But if we look at Depay as a player, he scored a few from the spot in the Champions League. In the latter stages, he was largely ineffectual. He hasn't been playing against the standard of player he'd see in the Premier League. Yes, he was a bit young when he went to the Premier League the first time, and now he's had the benefit of experience. But the main reason for me that this wouldn't be a good option to Manchester United is because you wouldn't have to drop Greenwood. You'd have to drop Martial, because Depay likes to play as a central striker now, and not so much as a someone just off the striker or on the wing. He likes to be the main man. He wouldn't get that at Manchester United. He'd have to play out in the wing again. And I think we've seen time and time again what happens when you force a striker out wide. I think Pierre Aubameyang is probably the only striker I can think of who's almost benefited from having that done to him.
Yeah.
So Depay is absolutely not an option for me. It is a tricky one because right wingers are at a premium. If I was Manchester United, I'm thinking, look, they went 120 million for Sancho plus all add-ons and the huge wages he's going to want. We can pick up Gareth Bale for 50, 60. We'll have to pay him large amount of wages, but Real Madrid don't want him. I take him. He's better than Sancho as it is. Yes, he's over the hill now. I think he's touching 30. But if you're looking for somebody to put straight into your team to improve them, to get you into a challenging position, and for somebody that Mason Greenwood can learn from, he's the ideal signing for me.
Interesting.
Yeah. I'd probably take a bigger hard pass on Gareth Bale, if I'm honest. He's probably got a better drive now with his golf club than he does with his left or right foot. I'm gonna put that one dead in the water. I understand what Reece is saying with Gareth Bale a couple of years ago maybe, but I think that it would be a terrible move for Gareth Bale because I just don't think he's the player that he used to be. What I did find funny, Spoon, was when you mentioned the Depay transfer to Reece, he straight away, even though I agree when he came out with his typical, it's not going to happen. And I think we need to make that Reece's
No, for Fabrizio Romano on Twitter's gone, here we go. Reece is going to have, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, Reece, I'm literally, anytime we talk about any transfer target on this podcast, that is your new thing now, hashtag it's not going to happen every single time, right? Just to touch back on a Depay situation, the thing that you don't want as well is that, say, in a hypothetical situation, you bring back Depay, United start becoming that club that just re-signs people because they made bad decisions. Like they did it with Pogba, that you can say that's a one-off. You do it with Depay, and then all of a sudden we start becoming this laughing stock of a club that's run so badly that they don't know what they're doing with their decisions, or we let this player go because he's rubbish. Oh wait, we'll have him back. Do you know what I mean? And
I got you. Yeah.
You can't be in that club. So the Sancho situation is, who knows at the moment, really? Nobody knows. Like you say, Spoon, it's either completely dead or it's completely still on, but behind the scenes. What's interesting is that I'm not hearing huge transfer news about other options at the moment, which if it was like totally dead, I thought we might see. So Sancho situation at the moment, I think it's, who knows? We'll just wait. I'm not expecting anything now, but yeah, who knows?
Yeah, interesting, lads. Could be anything. Going on to other Premier League news. Thiago Silva, not the guy from the Dave and AJ Tracy song, but the actual Thiago Silva is signed for Chelsea. Now, that's a very interesting transfer, the Thiago Silva Chelsea transfer, because on this podcast, again, a few weeks ago, we do tend to preempt a lot of things, and we said that Chelsea didn't have at that point one world-class defender. Now, it's very 50-50 the split from what I've seen on the Thiago Silva transfer, because a lot of people are like, you know what, he can still do well in the Premier League. He's got a lot to offer that Chelsea team. Other people are like, well, you know, he's a very, very short-term option. And to be honest with you, you would have been better off doing, you know, a transfer for, well, some people are saying a Declan Rice, some are saying a Upamecano. Yeah, Thiago Silva to Chelsea, lads. What are we saying? Do you think that was a worthwhile transfer for Chelsea, or is it kind of, Jim, what's your take?
Yeah, I don't think that one's going to happen, Spoon, to be honest. It's not going to happen. No, what I would say, me and Reese, I think we have the opposite opinion. But I think there are only two opinions you can have with Thiago Silva here, and that it's either it's going to go extremely well, and it's going to be looked at as a brilliant transfer, or he's not going to be at the races and it's going to go quite bad, and people are then going to say, told him he was over the hill. Yeah, he's 35. Why did you take a chance on him? I think Reese thinks it's more going to go towards the first option I said, and I think it's more towards the second, really. I do think it's come a bit late in his career. I could very well be proven wrong, but my gut tells me that for someone who's been playing in, have I mentioned the Farmers League before, for so many years, and Reese mentioned about the quality of opposition that Depay was coming up against, I think it's a very similar story in terms of Thiago Silva. The best forwards he comes up against are the ones he trains with every day. So to make that transition to quote-unquote the hardest league in the world in terms of pace, intensity, physicality, I can see him not doing that well against the likes of like your Vardys, your Aubameyangs. I can see him really getting taken apart. However, it is pretty much a free punt, isn't it, at the same time? So totally understand why Chelsea have taken a gamble on this, so to speak, because it represents very little risk to them. So if it doesn't come off, they'll probably just go, well, you know, it was worth a go. And if it does come off, then it's a masterstroke. So
yeah, I kind of agree with you in the sense that it's a free punt, but I think I largely disagree with what you said, because with this transfer, I think, yes, you are right. I do think it is going to go really well. And, you know, I'll outline why in a minute. But even if it doesn't go well on the pitch for Thiago Silva, you know, even if it turns out that he's lost that yard of pace, even if it turns out that, you know, he's not up to the level that he needs to be to play in that role for Chelsea in a side that wants to be challenging, or at least, you know, thereabouts. Even if that doesn't go well, he's been signed for free on a 1-year contract with the potential to extend if he's any good. He'll be on decent wages. But like I said, it's a 1-year deal. If it doesn't go well, they can just get rid of him. But that Chelsea side, in order to step up a level, they're going to need leaders. They've got an inexperienced manager. They need somebody who can be a leader in the dressing room, on the training pitch, and also, you know, on the pitch on game day. So they're going to have somebody who can give everyone around them the benefit of their experience, you know, title-winning experience.
They have got that, though, as Azpilicueta, Marcus Alonso, and N'Golo Kante. It's not like they don't have people.
N'Golo Kante is not a leader, and neither is Marcus Alonso. Regardless of their ability, these are not people who will step up. I know Cesar Azpilicueta has been club captain for a while, but he's overseen quite a sharp slide in their standards, and you'd have to say that it hasn't worked out, him being club captain. What I would say, this Thiago Silva signing, he will slot straight in. He is a player that has worked his way to the top. He's not somebody who's been bred in an academy of a big club and just found himself in the team like some of the top defenders have. He is somebody who worked his way to the top in the Brazilian leagues, and he's won titles in Italy. He's won titles in France. He's been captain of the Brazil national team for about 10 years. He's a top player. So yeah, I do think it's going to go well for him. Is he better than Zuma or Tomori or Christensen? I believe so. He contained Lewandowski in the Champions League final very well. He contained Costa, who's not an easy job, in the quarterfinal. Made him look really quiet. So I think he is still up to the job. He's still up to the job. I don't foresee a player like Chris Wood coming to Stamford Bridge and ruining Chelsea anymore. Not if Thiago Silva's marking him. And like I said, if it doesn't go well, they've still got somebody who's a leader on and off the pitch, and who's somebody who their young defenders, they're considerably, numerous young defenders can learn from. For me, it is a free hit, but it's you're essentially hiring a great player, and if he's not so great anymore, you're essentially hiring a really good learning opportunity.
Yeah, I think he adds something. What it is, though, I'm not entirely sure yet. He has the ingredients, like we said, to be a leader, and to be sort of the guy that really pulls the team forward. But with Vecchi a little bit, it might be a bit too late in his career. Yeah, again, he's been quite lucky in the sense that he's very athletic. He's been injury free. He's clearly in very good shape. But I guess time will reveal all, gents, on that one. So yeah, we'll swing back to that situation another day. Very quickly, just to touch upon Chelsea, because I know Becky wanted to bring it up. Havertz is almost done. Malang Sarr is done. He's going out on loan. Thiago, Werner, Ziyech looked brilliant yesterday in a friendly as well. What are you saying, lads? Expectation-wise now, it's going to be massive on Frank Lampard. And for someone who is relatively inexperienced, do you think Chelsea can maintain that sort of push again to go for the title, or is that going to be a bit too much pressure for them?
Yeah, I think we did. Myself and Beck discussed this yesterday. I think a lot will depend on whether they can get Havertz over the line. I think it's stretching out to a length of time now where it's starting to lean towards why hasn't it happened yet? Is it going to happen? Is it just a rumour mill that's just not going to quite develop in time for the new season? Because we are only 2 weeks away. So I would say a lot rests on Havertz coming in, because I think he's that real star quality that that could elevate your side to a title challenge. Yeah. I really do think he's that good. That being said, they have made some really good signings. We don't know how Werner's going to take the Premier League. A lot will depend on that. We've seen Chelsea sign some players like Fernando Torres, but more notably people like coming from overseas, Falcao, Shevchenko. People like these in the last 10, 15 years, and it hasn't always panned out. So a lot will, like I said, depend on how he takes the Premier League. I do think that Ziyech has got that kind of star quality, but he will need people in front of him who are doing the work, like Werner. I think a lot will depend again on if Kante can come back into form. Chilwell being up to the task defensively will be important, but I think their main problem now that they've brought in Thiago Silva, and you'd say that their defence should be fairly sturdy. Their main problem for a title challenge is the fact that they were about 25, 30 points, maybe more, off Liverpool last year. So that gap's going to narrow. I think we're going to anticipate that gap for Liverpool coming down, but it's got to go back up for Chelsea. And we've discussed in the past how having a goalkeeper, a good goalkeeper, can get you 10 points a season. With Kepa, you'd have to imagine that Chelsea are going to have to be 10 points clear of Liverpool in order for that to work, because he's probably the poorest goalkeeper in the league. And they won a mounted title challenge with him in net. There has been rumours about Chelsea being in the market for a new goalkeeper, but with all the money they've spent elsewhere, I can't really see them forking out another £50 million for another goalkeeper. So for me, I don't think they can challenge. But rightly, Frank Lampard's head is going to be on the chopping block. Should they not challenge?
Yeah. Well, just to briefly touch upon Kai Havertz, because you mentioned what's going to happen with that. I heard last night a chap called Kevin Hatchard, who's the TalkSport's European football expert, and he basically said that the current situation with the Kai Havertz deal is that everything is in place for the transfer to go through, but at the moment, Bayer Leverkusen are trying to get everything their side in line because they need to waive a replacement, and they're trying to do negotiations for replacements their end before they get the €100 million for Havertz, because they know that as soon as they've got €100 million to play with, that the price goes up for whoever they're trying to purchase. So apparently there's a bit of pushing and shoving going on at the moment with they're trying to get their replacement sort of pretty much done and dusted before or at the same time that Havertz is going through, so they're not held to ransom. So I do think that will still go through. And then with that being said, Reece mentioned that we had a brief chat about it yesterday. And it is my opinion that should the Havertz deal go through, and potentially even if it doesn't, but even more so if it does go through, I do think that if you're a Chelsea fan or just a football fan, there's an expectation for Chelsea to be challenging next season. And Reece obviously Amdenard a little bit agreed and maybe didn't fully agree, but what I put to him then was, if Ole Gunnar Solskjaer spends this amount of money and he doesn't end up challenging, then what happens to him, Spooner? Then everybody will be on Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and his head will massively on the chopping block. Chelsea haven't invested this amount of money in this number of players since the first Mourinho days, 04-05, I believe it was. They've made signings, they've always spent money, one player here, one player there, but they haven't invested a truckload of money in a lot of players for years now. So I think with that comes a lot of expectation. Yes, Kepa is weak. They have been linked to it. I think it's Onana from Ajax. And I think that will be a decent signing. But if Thiago Silva comes off as well as Reece thinks he might, then I think that plugs a lot of the defensive problems there. So whether you think they've spent the money in all the right areas or not, for that amount of money they're spending, I think there's no excuse not to mount a challenge. They don't have to win the title, but they need to be asking questions come the later part of the season. If they don't, I think it's a failure.
I'm with you, yeah. No. Going back to other Premier League now, Rodrigo to Leeds. I thought that was a very interesting signing. Leeds have basically taken advantage of Valencia's financial situation, and they've kind of preempted that Rodrigo wanted to move and have gone in, and with a caliber of coach that Leeds have now, they can start to attract, a lot bigger names, especially playing Premier League football. What is your take on the Rodrigo transfer, lads? He's 29 years old. He is, a prolific striker. He's very good. My one concern would be, do Leeds have the players to complement him, shall we say, and actually make the chances right now? But for, what was it, 30, 35 million, I think it was, give or take. It's a big investment. But what's your take on it, lads, initially?
I think that this one is, I don't know if it's that much of a smart money move, because he's about 30 million, right? And Rodrigo, he's not known as your typical out-and-out goal scorer. He's not prolific. And then gets 200 and something odd games in Valencia. He's scored, I think it's 50 goals or 59 goals, which isn't a fantastic strike rate. He's been to the Premier League before for Bolton, although quite a while back, and he did not cut the mustard then. And I just think for a club like Leeds, yes, they have a bit of money to spend, but that's a sizable chunk of their transfer chest to spend on a striker that's not really known for being a bagsman. In his best season for Valencia, he's got 16 league goals, and you would anticipate that it would be more difficult, especially for a promoted side in the Premier League. So my initial thought, although I don't know a huge amount of in terms of watching him every week, I certainly don't know much of him in that regard, but I can see this one really sort of come into nothing, or him just not really being anywhere near as effective as people think he might. I think he's being looked at as almost like that annoying Firmino role, where they pay a lot of money for him, but he brings people into play. You know, like we say about Firmino, the player who has the most shots of anybody else, but he brings people into play as a striker. I think that's kind of what they're going to be getting with him. And it just depends if the people that he's bringing into play are any good, I guess.
Yeah, I think we had a question from one of our viewers, Chris Eels, and his question is essentially: he's a Leeds fan, and are we going to qualify for the Champions League or the Europa League this season? Hope you're joking, Chris, because obviously Leeds aren't going to be challenging. I think everyone knows that. I think probably even Chris knows that, but they are going to struggle. I think everyone is agreed that Leeds are going to be in a dogfight. They have got Bielsa on their side. He is a world-class manager, and he obviously knows the people he wants to bring in. If we look at the recruitment that he's made throughout his time at Leeds, I think every player he's brought in has added to the team significantly, and he knows what he wants. He's a very technical manager, and he's sort of, he's not one to just sit there and manage the team on match days. He's constantly looking for ways to improve the team. And he's obviously judged that Rodrigo is, someone who he can bring in to improve the team. What we've got to realise about Leeds, first of all, is they're not a Manchester United, they're not a Man City, they're not a Liverpool. They haven't got a war chest. They have a limited fund that they can spend. They are a newly promoted team, so they need to find bargain deals. For me, Rodrigo is a bargain deal at £27 million. At a club like Valencia, if Manchester United were going in for him, we'd be looking at £50-60 million. So it is a good deal from Leeds' perspective. And if a newly promoted club can add a striker who's going to score 1 in 4 and get 11-12 goals a season, then that's a good addition for me. He's more a pressing forward, so he's going to fit into the way that Bielsa likes to play. We saw when they played Arsenal in the cup last year, they're not afraid to give big teams a go. They're not afraid to press and cause problems in the defence, and they did do that. So definitely add in Rodrigo, who can take chances, but will add to your team in other areas as well. Is a good signing for me. The problem with Leeds, and the reason why they can't challenge for Champions League or Europa League, or even top half, in my opinion, is the fact that they have so many other holes to plug. There's talk of different La Liga players going over to Leeds, as well as players like Rob Holding, who, whilst they do need a centre half, I don't rate Rob Holding. Whether anything of that will materialise, I'm not sure. But Ben White was a key player for them last year, and now he looks like he's going to sign a 4-year deal at Brighton. That's a huge loss for Leeds, and he's going to be exceptionally hard to replace. Aside from that, I think they need a right back. They need probably 1 or even 2 centre halves. They need a new goalkeeper. They do look, fairly set in midfield, but they need, a winger. And now they have signed a striker, so they've got 2 weeks essentially to sign 3 or 4 key players. I think if they can sign those 3 or 4 key players, then we might have a discussion about, are they going to be one of those surprise packages that, instantly goes into the top 10 like a Wolves? Wolves came up. They signed 1 or 2 really astute signings. We look at Raul Jimenez, Juan Moutinho, and they had a good manager with a good philosophy behind them, like Leeds have. And then that was possible, and they were in the Europa League within 1 or 2 years. It can happen. They've got the right manager. They've got the right platform. Elland Road, when the fans are back, going to be rocking. But they need the signings to be able to do that. I don't foresee that happening this window.
Yeah. So,
go on, Becky, go on.
Just to address the question as well that Maurice brought up, I don't know if that was kind of said in humour or whether he actually does hope it was humour, when he is definitely not Champions League, but is he quietly hoping that, like Reece said, there can be a bit of a Wolves, Sheffield United bounce on it, and they can maybe sneak up that end of the table. But for Leeds fans, I think first and foremost, regardless of who your manager is, regardless of what money you're spending, any promoted club, the first expectation that they should be happy with is that they survive, first and foremost. Doesn't matter whether you're Leeds, Aston Villa have proven that. Doesn't matter how big of a club you are. When you come up from the Championship, the first goal is survival. Whether you finish 17th place, it doesn't matter. Where do I think Leeds will finish? I do think they will be, like we said, in a dogfight, but I don't think they'll go down. I kind of foresee them in around about that 14th, 15th place area of the table, just because I don't think they'll have that quality to push any higher this year. And we mentioned the Wolves, Sheffield United. That's rare, though, isn't it? It's not often that will happen multiple seasons in a row. More often than not, 2 out of 3 at least, sometimes 3 out of 3 of the Championship teams that go up quickly go back down. So I think was it Chris you said, was it Reese who asked the question? I think got a little while yet before we talking about Leeds in the Europa League, but ambition is critical, as they say, isn't it? But the thing about you said Ellen Road as well, Reese, it's massive if they get fans back, because if we get fans back, then Ellen Road is a place that you don't really want to go. It's going to be tough to play. If we don't get fans back that quickly, then that's a big negative for Leeds, because that really flattens or levels the playing field, doesn't it, against most teams that they're playing in and around them in the table.
Yeah, and the thing about Leeds as well, as a final point, they are the type of club that hate everybody. There's not a team in the EFL that they don't hate, and so they will seem like a cup final for all the games.
Yeah.
Sure. Interesting. Leeds fans, let us know your opinion on Rodrigo. Just very quickly looking at his stats, I think at international level, he has 22 games, 8 goals. He's averaging almost sort of 1 every 3 games. For Valencia, he's averaging 1 every 4 games. So yeah, Leeds fans, let us know. I think the issue they may have is that they need players to complement him and create the chances. But give us your take. Yeah, there's a smart manager there that can hopefully get the best out of him. Other transfer news, which actually happened just before we came on and start recording the podcast, was Matt Doherty to Spurs. Now, let me just start off by saying that's a classic Jose Mourinho transfer. I think Matt Doherty is a solid right back. Now, what he brings you, and this is very interesting because I always go back to this quotation. When Jose Mourinho was trying to sign Ivan Perisic from Inter Milan, there was a journalist, I don't know if it was Fabrizio Romano or maybe someone else, fans were saying, what's your take on Perisic? And he said, Ivan Perisic is a 7 out of 10 player. And the fans went, what, 7 out of 10? What do you mean? He doesn't give a 9 or a 10? Oh, this is shit. What an awful transfer this will be. And what he politely said back was, 7 out of 10 means every single week you're going to get the same player. It's consistency. He knows he's a manager's dream. He's reliable. He's going to come onto the pitch every single week. He will give you that same solid performance, a 7 out of 10 player. Now, Matt Doherty is not necessarily the most glamorous signing that Spurs fans would want. But what you are getting is a very underrated fullback. And for 15 million, bargain. Absolute bargain. So, gents, let me know your opinion on the signing. What do you think?
Yeah. Go on.
Well, I was just going to say this one. Hugely conflicted on it. I'm a huge fan of Matt Doherty. I think he's a terrific player. The first concern I would have about this transfer is the fact that he usually plays in a back 5 with Wolves, or sort of a back 3 with him as a wing back. He won't get that system at Spurs. There'll be a degree of discipline that's expected of him. I do think he'll manage that, really well. It seems to me they're plugging a hole, though, that doesn't really exist. I like Matt Doherty. I think he's going to add to them. But if we're talking about areas that they needed to improve, you'd probably say that left back would be probably the area. Serge Aurier had the second most assists out of all the defenders last year. Obviously, second only to Trent, who was exceptional. So they're losing one of those two, either Matt Doherty or Serge Aurier, and you'd have to expect that it would be Serge Aurier. I like Doherty a lot. I think he's he's only going to improve the team. But they need to be sure that they sign some other players as well. You'd be looking at, I know they've signed Pierre Højbjerg, but for me, that's not a signing who's going to, make them challenge for Champions League football again. They need to be looking at a central midfielder. They need to be looking at a left back, maybe a centre half as well. But Doherty for sure. I think he's a terrific signing. For £15 million, it is extremely hard to say no. A bit confusing, though, at how they actually got him for £15 million in the current market.
This was the debate on Twitter, because I'm sure he's got at least 3 years of his Wolves contract left.
What I found interesting about this one, he would appear to be the world's worst man, if not, footballer. He's a massive Arsenal fan, massive Arsenal fan, and he not only has joined Spurs, but he's joined Spurs at a time where they're pretty much on the same level as Arsenal. So he's joined Spurs in the effort to get them above Arsenal and sort of eradicate Arsenal from European football. So that's going to be an interesting one. Is he going to be Agent Doherty, behind enemy lines sort of thing, or is he actually going to be a good signing for them?
Yeah, I agree. First of all, the transfer fee, if £15 million is correct, that is daylight robbery for a player of that quality, especially we're going off last season, right? So I hope, kind of for Doherty's sake, that he doesn't have a second season syndrome here. And sometimes you can see when players play exceptionally well for one club and move to another, will it be the same for Doherty? Like Reece said, he's probably not going to play the same system. He's going to have stiffer competition. Has Mourinho got different plans for him? Who knows? But I hope for Doherty's sake that it doesn't sort of dip off from second season. Then maybe starts on the bench more often than not, or he's in and out with competing with Sergio Aurier. You just don't know what's going to happen. But £15 million, I don't understand how that's happened. I don't understand how people aren't competing at that price. One thing's for sure, though, is you can see Mourinho building that strong, taller, brute culture at Spurs anyway. Same with Højbjerg, and now with Doherty. He doesn't sign small, diminutive players, does he, Mourinho, anymore? He said something along the lines of, when he came into Spurs, that basically this team, it's not full of winners. It's not basically full of players that are going to put their bodies on the line for Spurs. It hasn't got that aggressive sort of spine that he likes to have. And I don't rate the signing of Højbjerg, but you can kind of see what he's the type of player that he wants in there. And I can totally see Spurs being a more of a nasty, horrible side to play against at this rate next season than what they are at the moment. So yeah, I think it's got the making of a terrific move, Doherty, and I just hope. Well, as a United fan, you kind of hope it doesn't go too well, but for Doherty's sake, I hope it doesn't kind of all go a bit tits up, so to say, for him.
Yeah, excellent signing. It just come up now, 14.7 million, lads. So yeah, 14.7, and apparently Serge Aurier is in talks with AC Milan. So,
and like we said, if United had gone in for Matt Doherty, it'd have been 40.7, wouldn't it? So it is.
Yeah, no. Going on to other Premier League news again. Allan, I know very little of, has joined Everton. The fee, I believe it was around 25 million. I'll just bring it back up now. It's a very unfashionable signing initially. Some may question whether Everton really need him. He's predominantly sort of a holding midfielder, from what I gather. He gets around the pitch quite well, puts a foot in. Got a decent bit of technical ability, being that he's Brazilian as well. So Allan is in. The other news then is James Rodriguez is potentially on his way. Now, I'll just start by saying, James Rodriguez at 25 million. I know he's not everybody's cup of tea, but Everton, if they get James Rodriguez at 25 million, that is a fucking steal. Because James Rodriguez could easily be a squad player at Manchester United and help their front three. He could easily go to Arsenal and help their front line. He could definitely go to Spurs and play as a 10. He'd start over anyone else that's there. So for Everton to get him for 25 million seems like very good business. So just going back to those two transfers, one that's happened and one that's sort of evolving and about to happen. What's your take on the two? Reece, I'll start with you. What do you reckon?
Yeah, so with regards to this, it's quite nice to see, especially as a Newcastle fan now. I'm pretty much classing myself as a neutral when it comes to matters of the top half. So with regards to Everton, it's nice that they're sort of saying to the rest of the pack, don't forget about us. We still have ambition. We still want to do well. they've got a nucleus of players there, a lot of good midfielders, especially. They've got, Gomez, Sigurdsson. They probably, lack wingers, if we're being honest, but they're looking to add creativity, which is good. The Allan deal looks to be £25 million, and he's a very sturdy defensive midfielder. You'd have to say he's not of the Morgan Schneiderlin type. He looks like someone who can actually slot in and do a job in the midfield, do the dirty work, which is something that they've lacked, you'd say, pretty much since Gareth Barry left the club. So, yeah, he's definitely going to add to the team for sure. The problem is they are going to really struggle to break that top 6 or 7 teams, I think. But you've got to try. You've got to try, and they're going in the right direction. With the James Rodriguez thing, he has obviously the Carlo Ancelotti connection. They're looking at it more of a season-long loan with potentially the option to buy, like you said. And for a loan deal, if a player like James Rodriguez comes up on a loan, opportunity, and he wants to go to Everton of all places, then yeah, absolutely, you take him. In order for them to improve, I think they'll probably need a goalkeeper, like I said, for many teams. They probably need cover for Seamus Coleman because he has been injury-prone over the last few years, and when he's been out, they have struggled. And like I said, they'll need a winger. But I think the main thing they'll need is a goal scorer. Calvert-Lewin is a decent young player, but he's not quite going to fire them into the top 6, which is where they obviously are aspiring to be. But yeah, I think 2 very, very solid signings for Everton.
Yeah, if Allan, if his performances for my Serie A team on FIFA 20 and Ultimate Team running to go by, then he's going to be a revelation because he's been fantastic on there. But no, I do, rate Allan, like Reece said, fairly highly in terms of as a defensive midfielder. I really think he can do a solid job. And you see players of that kind of quality, especially James Rodriguez, if players like that are looking at Everton Football Club, then what message is that putting out to other players of that level? So the James Rodriguez signing would be huge, whether it's on loan, whether they actually buy him outright. I actually think that's a decent club for him to kind of rebuild, so to speak, because obviously he set the world alight in the World Cup back all those years ago, and we've seen flashes of James Rodriguez at Bayern and at Madrid, but he's never really settled and sort of nailed down that starting berth. And if you go somewhere like Everton, where the spotlight might not be as strong on him, then that could really work in his favour. Reece mentioned about how difficult it would be to break into that top 6, top 4. I agree. But Everton will be looking at Leicester, although they missed out this year, but they were right in there before lockdown. They won the league before that. Everton can look at teams like Leicester and think, well, if they can contest in that top 4, then if we get the signings right, why can't we? They've got the manager, Everton have, that can do it. And if they're showing this kind of investment, then there's no reason why this year, next year, they get the signings right. They can't be knocking on that door either.
Yeah, I agree. Very solid signing, to be honest. I think with James Rodriguez, one of the people off, it's a big signing. And Allan, he had something that is potentially missing there as well. Just to round up, lads, the real big news as well this week. And I came on this podcast last week and I said there is no sentiment in top-level football. It doesn't exist. It's a ruthless, dirty game at the top, right? And I said, Lionel Messi, he cannot stay at Barcelona. Can't stay there another season because he's not going to win nothing. He can't extend his contract because he's going to cost too much and offer too little. And he probably has too much power at that club. Well, lo and behold, I know Leo watches us. Obviously, he has a translator that translates everything for him. 48 hours later, he's on his way out the door. Now, the person that broke the transfer is the same person. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. Marcelo, I think it's Belcher. He basically was the first person to announce Neymar to PSG. He announced, again, Messi wanted to leave. And he's also come out now and said that Messi wants to go to Manchester City. So I think we can effectively rule out most other clubs. Maybe PSG could come in and nick him, but it's looking like Man City. So that Man City and Messi sort of Guardiola reunion, do you think that's the right move for him, lads? How do you think that will go?
Well, first of all, I mean, I think, James, like you've said to me before, if any club gets the opportunity to sign Lionel Messi, they're not turning him down. You know, even if you've got De Bruyne in your team and that's the only place Messi can play, then you drop De Bruyne because Messi is better. You know, even if you're privileged enough to have those players, then you have to get Messi. It's a no-brainer. If we're talking financials, well, the guy reportedly brings in $1.5 million a week in shirt sales. So wages aren't a problem. If it's a free transfer, then again, no-brainer. So he's ticking all those boxes. Is he the master of the dark arts, though? I mean, he looks to be forcing this move through, threatening to activate this reported clause that makes him a free transfer. And there's rumours that the president's going to step down, which is what he wants. All that aside, is it going to happen? Is it not? I can't see it happening just because it would be, you know, one of those generational signings that we just don't see. And we've already seen one with Ronaldo. So I couldn't see Messi leaving myself, which is a wrong decision from my point of view. But he loves his, his team, Barcelona, which is nice to see. Now, with regards to, Manchester City, which is the only place I could see him go in, I think you could build a strong case for this. You know, he played arguably the best football of his career under Pep Guardiola. Likes that system. He'll have players behind him that can provide him the chances to be the main man, rather than having to drop deep to get the ball and create chances for those around him, like he's had to do over the last few years. And which he's been world class at, by the way, but he's just had a really frustrated figure while doing it. There's the Aguero connection. You know, Aguero is godfather to his children, married to Maradona's daughter. So there's the Maradona connection, and Messi is really fond of Maradona. So I think all this, this is very much stars aligning for Messi to make that move. But it would be a bit strange to see Messi transfer to Man City and go to essentially an empty stadium every week. You'd have to imagine more fans would turn up to see Messi, but it's besides the point. I think it would be a good move for his career. Because the only bad move really is staying at Barcelona, but I can't see it happening.
Well, looking at this news, sorry to cut you off there, Becky, on Twitter. This is actually news. This has just come up on my Twitter feed now.
Yeah.
Marcelo Belcher has come out and said Lionel Messi is not showing up today for pre-season for coronavirus testing and pre-season testing. Basically, the reason for that is Lionel Messi no longer considers himself a Barcelona player and has decided to unilaterally break his contract with the club. So that's from the guy that broke the Neymar transfer news.
Very exciting. I'd love to see him in the Premier League.
So the first thing I'll say, I tweeted last night something along the lines of, it's laughable, I don't know if you saw it, listening to fans of other clubs trying to justify why Messi wouldn't fit into their team. I was listening to TalkSport last night, and it was a Liverpool fan saying that he just doesn't work hard enough for Klopp's system. Would we be dropping for Messi? And I nearly crashed my car because I just can't understand it. You got United fans saying, "Oh, but does he get in ahead of Bruno? Will he disrupt?" Shut up! Just shut up! Like, the man is arguably, depending on on what side you're on, but let's not get into that debate. He's one of the all-time greatest to ever kick the football, and he scored 25 goals last season and 21 assists in like 40-something appearances. There's people saying, "Oh, Father Time's catching up with him. He's dipping off slightly." Yeah, all right. He might be dipping off from his alien numbers. Him and Ronaldo still belong in a different galaxy to other people on this planet when they want. So he gets in any team, anywhere in the world, whenever he wants. Messi does. And whether you have Aguero, Sterling, Messi in like a front three with De Bruyne playing behind, I can't even imagine what that would be like. Secondly, there's like Reece touched upon with his fee. There's politics in this, right? So Barcelona have sacked their legal team because they believe that their legal team was also the one that instructed Messi to send that fax over to Barcelona about his contract clause. What I've heard as well is that the situation with Messi's contract is that I think it's as of June 8th or June the 10th this year is when his free transfer clause ended. But the case that's being taken to arbitration is that because of the coronavirus, that his clause should be sort of elongated and made sort of extended further on, which would mean that the free transfer can still go on. I think that's massive whether they win or lose that, because if they do win that, then obviously the option for him to go for free makes this transfer extremely doable. If they lose that and they invoke that, I think it's 600 or 700 million euro fee, then that massively complicates this deal hugely, because in this financial climate, somebody's going to have to come in and help with some sort of financial package to make that happen. The other option they're talking about is maybe they can meet somewhere in the middle, where the fee, the rest down, it's like 200-300 million. So City seem to be the only team that looks like there's some substance in him actually going there. They spoke of PSG and Man United. I can't see any of that happening. So if City are in negotiations to potentially get him, and then arbitration rules that his fee of 600 million euros stands, then that causes massive problems. What's also being said as well is that you got Guardiola, and forgive me on his name, is it like Tiki Billisteri, whatever his name is, who was involved in the transfer dealings for City. They're both ex-Barcelona men, and apparently neither of them want to be seen as pushing this move because of their Barcelona history. So I think it's a little bit quiet from that side of it in City at the moment, that they want it to happen, but they're not exactly calling for it to happen because that doesn't really look great on their Barcelona part. So I'm with Reece, though, to sort of finish off. I'd love to see Messi in the Premier League, not ideally at Man City, but I'm just intrigued to see what sort of levels he could set in this league.
Well, lads, more breaking news again. I got more news for you. We come with the breaking news on VOV. I don't know if I'm pronouncing them right, but Cadena SCR, leading Spanish newspaper, have tweeted they've seen Lionel Messi's contract at Barcelona, which states he doesn't have a buyout clause of 700 million to break his contract for the final year. That was an optional extension. So there is no buyout clause of 700 million. So whoever goes in for Lionel Messi will negotiate a transfer fee of their choosing. City, I think they were on about a player plus cash deal, which would probably suit both parties in fairness, and it'd be a good upgrade for players like Jesus and Bernardo Silva. But yes, just before we round up, lads, anything further you want to add? Because we'll touch upon the Messi subject over the next few weeks more and more. So we'll do sort of updated videos. But just to sort of round it off there, with the news that I've given you there from Marcelo Belcher and the Spanish press, can you now see it happening, or are you still 50-50 on it?
It's a minefield of misinformation. There's no way in my mind that a Spanish newspaper have got access to Lionel Messi's contract. But we just don't know, do we?
We shall find out. All right, people, we'll round it up then. Like us on Instagram, like us on Facebook. If we have, should we get a Facebook page going, lads? Do you reckon?
Why not?
With it, we'll have a look. We'll have a look. I mean, Facebook. I mean, it's mostly housewives that we went to school with, but I mean, they all love us anyway. So yeah, we may get a Facebook page going, but like us on Instagram, like us on YouTube, like us on Twitter. Follow up all the gang. Make sure you subscribe. Again, just a big shout out to all of our new followers. Again, it doesn't go unnoticed. If you do follow us in any shape or form, whether it's on Twitter, Instagram, you subscribe on YouTube, we generally really, really do appreciate it. So keep following us, keep asking us questions, keep interacting with the gang. The B&B Dynasty continues. We will be back next week at some point again with more transfer news. And again, as per Chris's question that came up, if anybody does have any questions, let us know. And we'll be more than happy to interact and pop them on the show. But for now, we'll let you all go. Thank you for watching, people. Take care. Ciao for now.